The emergency council chamber filled with voices arguing over each other. 12 species representatives sat around the circular table, their translator devices struggling to keep up with the chaos. High Chancellor Vorin slammed his three-fingered hand against the metal surface, demanding silence. "Another fleet has gone dark," he announced, his pale blue skin darkening with stress. "That makes 4 patrol groups in the last month, 78 ships, no distress calls, no debris fields, just silence." The room erupted again. Counselor Dreth, a reptilian female with golden scales, hissed her frustration. "How is this possible? Our ships have the best shields in the galaxy. Our weapons can crack planets. What enemy could destroy entire fleets without leaving evidence?" "Not what," came a quiet voice from the corner. Tech analyst Pym, a small furry creature with 6 arms, manipulated a holographic display. "Who? We recovered one partial log from the debris field in Sector 9. Watch." The hologram flickered to life, showing the view from a warship bridge. Space looked normal at first, filled with stars and distant nebulae. Then a single ship appeared on sensors, small, unremarkable. The warship captain laughed, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "A human vessel. That explains nothing. Humans are scavengers. They pick through garbage and sell it to the highest bidder." The hologram showed the warship powering weapons. The human ship didn't move. It just floated there, waiting. Then the recording cut to static. "That was 8 days ago," Pym said softly. "The wreckage we found suggests gravitational collapse. Something crushed their shields like paper." Vorin felt cold fear settle in his chest. One human ship did this. "We believe so," Pym confirmed. "We've been tracking the disappearances. They all happened in the same region, all after our forces destroyed that refugee convoy last month." The council chamber fell silent. That convoy had been carrying refugees from a dozen worlds, fleeing the coalition's expansion into the outer territories. High Command had labeled them as smugglers and ordered their destruction. 200 civilian ships reduced to ash. Vorin had approved the order himself. "Are you suggesting this is revenge?" Dreth asked. "One human is hunting us because we destroyed some refugees." "Not some refugees," Pym corrected, pulling up another file. "The human's name is David Ross. He operated a salvage business in that sector. His daughter was on one of those refugee ships. She was 16 years old." Vorin closed his eyes. This was worse than an enemy attack. This was personal. This was someone who had nothing left to lose. "We need to respond," War Admiral Shen declared, his muscular frame towering over the others. "Send a proper strike force, 50 ships, advanced tactical formation, find this human and eliminate him." "Perhaps we should try communication first," suggested Counselor Myra, a peaceful species known for diplomacy. "If this is about the refugee convoy, we could offer compensation, acknowledge the mistake." Shen's laugh was harsh. "Mistake? We followed proper protocol. Those ships refused to identify themselves. We had every right to engage. I will not let one grieving human threaten the Coalition's authority." Vorin knew they had reached a decision point. The Coalition had ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries through strength and unity. Showing weakness now could encourage rebellion across 100 worlds. But something about this situation felt wrong. Humans were supposed to be harmless. They traded, they negotiated, they avoided conflict whenever possible. They didn't hunt down military fleets. "Very well," Vorin said finally. "Admiral Shen, you have authorization for a strike force, 50 ships. Find David Ross. Try to take him alive if possible. We need to understand how he's defeating our vessels." Shen nodded and left immediately, already barking orders into his communication device. The other counselors began filing out, discussing the implications in hushed tones. Only Pym remained, still studying the data. "Something troubles you?" Vorin asked. The analyst looked up with worried eyes. "High Chancellor, I've been reviewing everything we know about humans. They're not warriors, they're survivors, they adapt, they improvise, they don't fight the way we do. Your point? My point is that we're treating this like a standard military operation. Find the enemy, engage with superior numbers, achieve victory. But what if that's exactly what David Ross wants us to do? What if he's been studying us, learning our patterns? Vorin considered this. You think 50 ships aren't enough. I think we don't understand what we're facing, Pym said quietly. And that scares me more than any weapon. 3 days later, Admiral Shen's strike force entered Sector 9 with full sensor arrays active. 50 of the Coalition's finest warships, each capable of destroying a moon. They spread out in a standard search pattern, scanning every asteroid and gas cloud. David Ross didn't make them wait long. His ship appeared on their sensors, broadcasting on all frequencies. The message was simple, delivered in a calm voice that carried no anger, just cold determination. You killed innocents, children who had done nothing wrong, old people fleeing war, families looking for peace. You destroyed them without mercy or trial. Now you come for me. Good. I've been waiting. Admiral Shen ordered weapons charged. Around him, his officers worked efficiently, confident in their training and technology. The human ship was small, alone, outnumbered 50-1. This would be over quickly. All ships, Shen commanded, open fire. The void lit up with energy weapons, missiles, and plasma charges. Enough firepower to vaporize a small planet converged on David Ross's position. But the human ship moved, and everything changed. David Ross's fingers moved across the control panel with practiced precision. His ship, the Wayfarer, responded like an extension of his body. 20 years of salvage work had taught him to fly through debris fields that would kill most pilots. Now those skills kept him alive against 50 warships. The first volley of weapons fire tore through empty space where his ship had been moments before. David didn't waste time celebrating. He was already moving, using momentum from a nearby asteroid's gravity to slingshot around its dark side. The warships adjusted their formation, trying to box him in. They moved like they had trained, following standard tactical doctrine. That was their first mistake. David triggered a pre-placed beacon he'd hidden in the asteroid field weeks ago. It emitted a false energy signature that mimicked his ship's drive system. Half the fleet immediately shifted to engage the fake target. By the time they realized their error, David had positioned himself behind their formation. He didn't fire his weapons yet. Ammunition was limited and he needed every shot to count. Instead, he locked onto the nearest warship's communications array with a tight beam transmission. The message contained every video file he'd recovered from the refugee convoy's destroyed data cores. Children singing birthday songs, families sharing meals, old people telling stories to grandchildren. Then the final moments. The coalition warships opening fire without warning. The screams. The warship's crew saw everything. David made sure their command knew he'd sent it. "This is what you destroyed," his voice came through their speakers. "Remember their faces." Then he fired, not at their hulls or shields. He targeted their sensor arrays with surgical precision. 3 shots from his railgun, and the lead warship was blind, spinning helplessly as it tried to compensate. The ship behind it couldn't adjust course fast enough. They collided with a grinding crash of metal and energy shields overloading. Admiral Shen watched his tactical display with growing disbelief. How is he predicting our movements? His tactical officer, a young recruit named Pesh, studied the data streams. "Sir, he's not predicting. He's reacting. His response time is impossible. No organic being should be able to process information that fast." "Then he's using AI support. We have countermeasures for that." "We've already deployed them, sir. They're not working. Whatever he's using, it's not standard AI." David didn't use AI. He used something the coalition had never valued: experience, instinct. Pattern recognition developed through decades of navigating dangerous situations. He saw how they moved before they moved. He understood their training because he'd studied every engagement the Coalition had fought in the last 10 years. They were predictable. He was not. Another warship exploded, its reactor breached by a missile that had bounced off 2 asteroids before finding its target. David had calculated that trajectory in his head, accounting for gravity, rotation, and the warship's projected movement. It was the kind of shot that should be impossible. He made it look easy. The fleet began to panic. Shen could hear it in their communications, captains demanding new orders, crews reporting impossible combat data. 3 ships broke formation and tried to retreat. David let them go. They weren't running from fear. They were running to warn others, to spread the message that humanity wasn't as helpless as everyone believed. All ships regroup at coordinate 77 Alpha, Shen ordered. Defensive formation. We'll force him to come to us. The remaining warships pulled together, creating overlapping shield fields and interlocking fire zones. It was a solid strategy. Any conventional attacker would have to expose themselves to devastating crossfire to engage. David studied the formation for 30 seconds. Then he smiled sadly, thinking about his daughter Rebecca. She'd always loved puzzles. Find the pattern, she'd say. Everything has a pattern. The Coalition's formation had a pattern. They'd clustered their capital ships in the center, with lighter vessels forming a protective shell, strong against frontal assault, vulnerable to disruption. David triggered another beacon. This one was attached to a chunk of ice he'd nudged into a slow orbit weeks ago. The ice chunk was massive, roughly the size of a city block. It had been drifting through space for millennia. Now it was drifting directly toward the Coalition's formation. Incoming object, Pesh reported, adjusting position to avoid collision. The fleet moved. They had to. The ice chunk's mass made it dangerous despite its slow speed. As they shifted, their perfect formation broke apart. Gaps appeared in their overlapping shields. David went through the gaps like a knife. His ship was built from salvaged parts, true, but those parts came from everywhere. Human stealth plating from a decommissioned spy ship, shield generators from 3 different species, modified to work together, weapons systems from every conflict he'd ever witnessed. The Wayfarer wasn't elegant. It was a patchwork nightmare held together by human engineering and stubbornness. It was also the most dangerous ship in this sector. David fired everything at once, missiles that split into smaller warheads, railgun slugs that punched through weakened shields, energy weapons that targeted specific system vulnerabilities he'd identified. He didn't try to destroy every ship. He disabled them, broke their weapons, fried their communications, made them helpless. When the chaos ended, 38 warships were drifting, damaged beyond combat capability. 12 had managed to retreat, limping back toward Coalition space with their stories of terror. Admiral Shen's flagship was among the disabled vessels, its entire bridge crew staring at their useless controls. David opened a channel to them. Tell your council this is just the beginning. Every ship you send, I'll destroy. Every life you take, I'll remember. You wanted to show the galaxy that the Coalition is strong. Instead, you've shown them that one human with a reason to fight is stronger than all your fleets. He ended the transmission and vanished into the asteroid field, leaving behind wreckage and disbelief. The Coalition had lost 50 ships. David Ross hadn't even been scratched. News of the defeat spread through the Coalition like wildfire. 50 warships reduced to scrap by a single human. The council chamber descended into shouting matches. Some species demanded immediate withdrawal from Sector 9. Others called for overwhelming force. Fear and anger mixed into a toxic combination. High Chancellor Voren watched the chaos with growing concern. In 300 years, the Coalition had never faced such humiliation. Their reputation as the galaxy's peacekeepers was crumbling. If they couldn't defeat one human, how could they maintain order across 1,000 systems? We need to respond decisively, Admiral Shen announced, his pride wounded by his defeat. 200 warships, full battle formation, advanced tactical protocols, will surround the entire sector and flush him out. Counselor Myra protested immediately. 200 ships, that's a fleet large enough to conquer a solar system. Against one person, this is madness. This is necessity, Shen shot back. David Ross has technology we don't understand. He fights in ways we can't predict. We need overwhelming numbers. Or we need to negotiate, Myra insisted. Open dialogue, find out what he wants. He wants us dead, Dreth said flatly. He's made that clear. We killed his daughter. Nothing we say will change that. Vorin raised his hand for silence. Admiral Shen, you'll have your 200 ships, but this time study his tactics. Learn from your mistakes. Don't underestimate human creativity. Far away in Sector 9, David Ross sat in his cramped cockpit, eating a ration bar that tasted like cardboard. His ship floated in the shadow of a dead planet, powered down to minimum systems. Out here, in the darkness between stars, he was invisible. He'd known this day would come. The day when his daughter Rebecca died in a flash of coalition fire. She'd been helping refugees, using her medical training to treat sick children. She'd sent him a message the day before the attack. Dad, these people need us. I know it's dangerous, but we can't just look away. David had tried to reach her. He'd pushed his ship to maximum speed, breaking every safety regulation. He'd arrived 12 hours too late. The debris field was still warm. He'd found her medical kit floating among the wreckage, the name tag she'd written in careful letters still attached. Dr. Rebecca Ross, helping where I can. He'd held that kit and made a promise. Justice. Not for himself. For every innocent person the Coalition had destroyed in their march across the stars. His console beeped. Long-range sensors detected incoming ships. Lots of them. David pulled up the display and counted. 198 warships entering the sector from multiple vectors. They'd learned from Shen's defeat. No more clustering together. They were spreading out, creating a net that would sweep through every cubic meter of space. David studied their formation for hours, making notes, calculating trajectories. They were being smart this time. Random patrol patterns, unpredictable movements, constant communication between ships to prevent isolation. Whoever planned this operation understood what had happened to Shen's fleet. But they still didn't understand David. He'd been preparing this sector for weeks. Every asteroid, every ice chunk, every debris field had been mapped and studied. He'd placed hundreds of small devices throughout the region. Not weapons, something better, tools. David powered up his systems and opened a transmission on all Coalition frequencies. You sent 200 ships, that's impressive. Shows you're taking me seriously, but you're still making the same mistake. You think numbers matter. They don't. Strategy matters. Preparation matters. Knowing your environment matters. Admiral Shen's voice came back immediately. Surrender, David Ross. We have you surrounded. There's nowhere to run. I'm not running, David replied calmly. I'm right here, come get me. He transmitted his exact coordinates and waited. The Coalition fleet converged on his position, weapons charged and shields at maximum. They expected a fight. They expected tricks. What they didn't expect was for David to simply sit there, his ship's weapons powered down. It's a trap, Shen warned his fleet. Stay alert. Scan for mines, hidden weapons, anything unusual. They scanned everything, found nothing. David's ship was alone, unarmed, practically helpless. It didn't make sense. He's given up, one captain suggested. He knows he can't win. Then why transmit his location? Another asked. Why make it easy? David answered that question by activating his devices, all of them, simultaneously. The devices weren't explosives. They were electromagnets, powerful ones, scavenged from old cargo haulers and mining equipment. David had spent weeks positioning them throughout the asteroid field, attaching them to rocks, hiding them in ice formations. Now they activated in a carefully programmed sequence. Asteroids began moving, slowly at first, then faster as momentum built. The magnetic fields pulled them into calculated trajectories, creating a chaotic dance of stone and ice. The coalition ships found themselves dodging obstacles that appeared from nowhere. Their perfect formation shattered as captains made desperate maneuvers to avoid collisions. In the confusion, David moved. His ship darted through gaps in their formation, using the asteroids as cover and weapons. He didn't need to fire his own guns. He just needed to guide the chaos, pushing ships into danger zones, creating collision courses, making them waste ammunition shooting at rocks. One warship fired at an approaching asteroid, not realizing another ship was directly behind it. The plasma blast went straight through the shattered rock fragments and struck their ally. Shield harmonics created a feedback loop. Both ships went dead, floating helplessly. David repeated this tactic across the battlefield. Use their strength against them. Make them their own worst enemy. It was a strategy humans had perfected thousands of years ago on Earth. The coalition had forgotten that humans learned warfare from each other, and humans had always been creative about killing. 3 hours later, the asteroid field was a graveyard of disabled warships. 17 had been destroyed outright. The rest were damaged, their crews scrambling to make repairs while avoiding more debris. David's ship emerged from the chaos with minor shield damage and nothing more. He opened one final transmission. Tell your council, send as many ships as you want. The answer will always be the same. Then he disappeared into the void, leaving 200 warships stranded and helpless in a sector they thought they controlled. The Coalition Council chamber no longer felt like the center of galactic power. It felt like a funeral. 350 ships defeated, thousands of crew members dead or stranded, and one human responsible for all of it. Voran stared at the tactical reports, each one more impossible than the last. David Ross fought like a ghost, appearing and vanishing at will. He used the environment itself as a weapon. He turned their advantages into weaknesses. Everything the Coalition knew about warfare seemed useless against this one human. We're receiving messages from member worlds, Pym reported quietly. Several species are questioning our leadership. They want to know why we can't defeat a single enemy. Some are threatening to withdraw from the Coalition. Then they're fools, Shen growled. We need unity now more than ever. Unity requires trust, Myra said. We've lost that. David Ross exposed our weakness to the entire galaxy. We claimed to be protectors. Now we look like bullies who can't even protect ourselves. Dreth slammed her claws on the table. So what do you suggest? Surrender to this human, admit defeat. I suggest we face reality, Myra replied. We started this by destroying that refugee convoy. David Ross is fighting for justice, not conquest. Maybe we should have listened to that message before sending 500 ships to their deaths. Voran felt the weight of those words. 500 ships. Not yet, but close. Too close. The galaxy was watching. Every species with grievances against the Coalition was taking notes. If one human could fight them to a standstill, what could an organized resistance do? We have one option left, Shen said firmly. The final armada, 250 ships, our best captains, advanced weapons that we've kept in reserve, planet-killer missiles, reality disruption technology, everything we have. That's insane, Myra protested. Those weapons are meant for existential threats, for species that try to destroy entire civilizations. This is an existential threat, Shen insisted. Not to our lives, but to our authority. If we can't stop David Ross, the Coalition will collapse. 1,000 systems will descend into chaos. Is that what you want? Silence filled the chamber. Everyone knew Shen was right, even if they hated admitting it. The coalition had maintained peace through strength. Without that strength, everything would unravel. Vorin made his decision. Prepare the final armada, but send one last message to David Ross. Tell him if he doesn't surrender, we'll have no choice but to target human colonies. He has 48 hours to respond. Deep in Sector 9, David received that message. He sat in his cockpit, exhausted from weeks of constant vigilance. His ship needed repairs. His body needed rest. But most of all, his heart needed to know that Rebecca's death meant something. The threat against human colonies changed everything. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about protecting innocent people. The same innocent people the coalition had murdered without mercy. David made his choice. He wouldn't hide. He wouldn't run. He'd meet them in open space where every species in the galaxy could watch what happened. He'd make sure everyone saw what the coalition was willing to do. He recorded a message and broadcast it on every frequency to every world that would listen. My name is David Ross. I'm a salvage operator from Earth. 4 months ago, the coalition destroyed a refugee convoy in Sector 9. My daughter was on one of those ships. She was 16 years old. She died trying to help people the coalition labeled as criminals. David paused, gathering his thoughts. I fought back, not because I'm a soldier, not because I'm a hero, because someone needed to show the galaxy that the coalition isn't invincible, that power without accountability is just tyranny with better weapons. He looked directly at the camera. Now they're threatening human colonies, innocent families who have nothing to do with this fight, so I'm going to meet their final armada. I'm broadcasting the coordinates. Anyone who wants to watch can tune in. The coalition says they represent order and peace. Let's see if that's true when they use planet-killer weapons against one ship. The message spread like a virus through the galactic network. Within hours, billions of beings were discussing it. The coalition's reputation was already damaged. Now David had forced them into an impossible position. If they used overwhelming force against one human, they'd prove his point. If they failed again, their authority would evaporate. The final armada assembled at the edge of coalition space. 250 warships representing 12 different species, each one commanded by veterans who'd studied David's tactics. They knew about his tricks with asteroids and false signals. They knew about his surgical strikes and environmental warfare. This time, they'd fight in empty space. No cover, no obstacles, just raw military power against one salvage ship. Admiral Shen stood on his flagship's bridge, studying the tactical displays. His crew worked with grim determination. Everyone knew this battle would determine the coalition's future. Sir, we're detecting a transmission, Pesh reported. It's David Ross. He's broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through. David's voice filled the bridge, calm and steady. I know you're coming. I've been waiting. You have your planet killers and your reality weapons. You think that makes you strong. But real strength isn't about how much you can destroy. It's about what you're willing to protect. Shen started to respond, but David cut him off. I want you to know something before we do this. Your crews aren't my enemies. They're following orders. They believe they're protecting civilization. But your leaders, the ones who ordered that refugee convoy destroyed, they're cowards hiding behind uniforms and regulations. The transmission ended. Coordinates appeared on every screen. David's location. He wasn't hiding. He was waiting in empty space, exactly where he said he'd be. All ships, Shen ordered, proceed to coordinates. Battle formation Delta 7, this ends today. The armada moved forward. 250 warships against one human who refused to kneel. Every species in the galaxy watched and waited to see who would survive. Empty space stretched forever in all directions. No asteroids, no planets, no cover of any kind, just darkness and distant stars. David Ross floated in his ship, alone, while 250 warships arranged themselves in a perfect sphere around his position. Admiral Shen studied his tactical display with satisfaction. Every angle covered, every escape route blocked, overlapping fields of fire that would vaporize anything caught inside. This time, David had no tricks to use, no environment to exploit, just his small ship against the full might of the coalition. "Open a channel," Shen ordered. David's face appeared on screen. He looked tired. Human years showed in the lines around his eyes and the gray in his hair, but those eyes held something that made Shen uncomfortable. Acceptance. Peace. The look of someone who'd already won, regardless of what happened next. "Last chance," Shen said. "Surrender now will make your death quick." "No," David replied simply. "You murdered my daughter. You murdered thousands of innocent people. You threatened human colonies to get to me. The galaxy needs to see what the coalition really is. The galaxy will see your destruction. They'll see what happens to those who challenge us." David smiled sadly. "You still don't understand. This was never about winning. It was about showing everyone that you can be fought, that your ships can burn, that your authority isn't absolute." He reached forward and pressed a button. His ship's reactor signature spiked dramatically. Energy readings went off the charts. Every sensor in the coalition fleet screamed warnings. "He's going to self-destruct," Pesh shouted. "Pull back." But David wasn't destroying his ship. He was activating something he'd been building for months, something impossible that only human engineering and desperation could create. A modified singularity drive that didn't just fold space for travel. It collapsed it. The wreckage from 350 destroyed coalition ships hadn't drifted randomly through Sector 9. David had been positioning them carefully with every battle. Thousands of tons of metal and equipment, spread across precise coordinates that formed a massive pattern in three-dimensional space. Now those wrecks began moving, slowly at first, then faster. The singularity drive pulled at them with artificial gravity, dragging everything toward David's position. The coalition armada suddenly found themselves in a trap they couldn't see coming. "Evasive maneuvers," Shen ordered. "Get away from the debris field." But the debris was coming from every direction. Ships that tried to move forward found wreckage blocking their path. Ships that tried to retreat crashed into each other as formation broke down. The careful sphere of warships became chaos as captains made desperate decisions. David's ship took damage immediately. Shields flickered and died. Hull plates cracked under stress. His life support system threw error messages across every screen. But he kept the singularity drive active, pulling harder, crushing everything toward a central point. A coalition warship exploded as debris punched through its weakened shields. The explosion triggered a chain reaction. Another ship's reactor went critical. Then another. Energy blasts and shrapnel filled the space where moments before there had been nothing. "Shut it down," Shen screamed at David. "You'll kill us all." "That's the point," David said quietly, blood running from his nose as acceleration forces tore at his body. "You were willing to use planet killers against one ship. You were willing to threaten colonies. This is what desperation looks like. This is what happens when you push someone too far." The singularity grew stronger. Coalition ships fired their weapons in panic, trying to destroy the source of the gravitational pull. But David had positioned his ship perfectly. Every shot that missed him hit another coalition vessel. They were destroying each other while debris continued raining down from all sides. Pesh abandoned his post and ran. Half of Shen's crew followed, trying to reach escape pods before their ship was crushed. Shen stood frozen, watching his fleet tear itself apart. 250 ships, the coalition's finest, reduced to scrap by one human's final gambit. David felt his ribs crack as acceleration pushed him against his seat. His vision blurred. Pain became a constant companion, but he kept his hand on the control, maintaining the singularity, watching the coalition's pride crumble around him. A massive warship spun out of control and collided with three others. The combined mass of metal and shielding created a momentary stable point in the chaos. Dozens of ships tried to use it as shelter, clustering together. David saw his opportunity and diverted more power to the drive. The cluster of ships imploded, shields overloaded in cascading failure, hulls compressed like aluminum cans. Thousands of crew members died in seconds as their vessels were crushed into debris that joined the growing field of destruction. "All ships retreat," Shen finally ordered. "Maximum speed, get out of the gravity well." But it was too late for most of them. The singularity had reached critical mass. It pulled at everything within range, including ships trying to escape. Their engines couldn't overcome the gravitational force. One by one, they were dragged back into the killing field. David's console showed life support failing, oxygen levels dropping, hull breaches on multiple decks. His ship was dying and so was he. But through the cracked viewscreen, he could see coalition warships burning. Hundreds of them. The most powerful fleet ever assembled, defeated not by superior technology but by human determination and sacrifice. He thought about Rebecca, about her smile and her dreams of helping people. She'd believed in making the galaxy better. David had shown the galaxy what happened when good people were murdered, when power went unchecked, when justice was forgotten. His hand slipped from the control. The singularity drive continued on momentum, pulling, crushing, destroying. David's last thought was simple. He'd kept his promise. Rebecca's death had meant something. The Wayfarer's reactor finally gave out. Emergency systems died. David Ross stopped breathing as his ship became one more piece of debris in the field of destruction he'd created. Admiral Shen watched from his damaged flagship as the final ships were pulled into the singularity. 250 warships. None would return home. The coalition's greatest military operation had become its greatest defeat. And one human was responsible for it all. Silence fell across the Coalition Council chamber. The tactical displays showed nothing but static where the final armada should have been. 500 warships sent to hunt one human. 0 ships returned. The numbers seemed impossible, but the evidence was undeniable. High Chancellor Vorin stood slowly, his three-fingered hands shaking. Around him, the council representatives sat in stunned disbelief. No one spoke. What could they say? The coalition's military might have been shattered by a single human who'd refused to accept injustice. "We need to issue a statement," Dreth finally said, her voice hollow. "The member worlds will demand answers." "Answers?" Myra laughed bitterly. "What answers can we give? We destroyed a refugee convoy and murdered innocents. When one man sought justice, we sent armies to silence him. Now those armies are gone and the entire galaxy watched us fail." Pym pulled up a display showing communication traffic across the galaxy. Billions of messages, thousands of news broadcasts, every species discussing what had happened. The coalition's reputation wasn't just damaged, it was destroyed. "Reports are coming in from border systems," Pym said quietly. 3 species have formally withdrawn from the coalition. 12 others are holding emergency votes. We're receiving demands for investigations into our military actions. Some worlds are calling for trials, war crime trials. Vorin closed his eyes. The coalition had maintained peace for 3 centuries through strength and authority. Now that authority was gone, burned away by one human sacrifice. The galaxy had learned a terrible lesson. The coalition could be beaten. The powerful could fall. Justice could come from the most unexpected places. "What about David Ross?" Shen asked. The Admiral's uniform was torn, his face bruised from the escape pod landing. He'd survived. Most of his crew hadn't. Did we at least confirm his death? "We're picking up scattered readings from the debris field," Pym confirmed. "The Wayfarer was completely destroyed. No life signs detected. David Ross is dead." The council chamber fell silent again. They'd won technically. Their target was eliminated, but the victory felt hollow, empty. 500 ships for one human's life. The math didn't work. The sacrifice didn't balance. Across the galaxy, humans received the news of David's death in different ways. Some mourned, some celebrated, some simply nodded, understanding what he'd done and why it mattered. Earth's government called an emergency session. Ambassador Lisa Harris addressed the assembly with careful words. David Ross acted alone. His actions do not represent Earth's official position. However, we cannot ignore the facts. The coalition destroyed a refugee convoy carrying innocent civilians, including his daughter. When he sought justice, they responded with military force. We condemn all violence, but we also condemn the murders that started this conflict. It was a careful statement, designed to protect Earth while acknowledging David's cause. But privately, human leaders knew something had shifted. The coalition would never look at humanity the same way. They'd learned humans could fight back. That knowledge changed everything. 3 weeks after the final battle, a salvage crew from a neutral species entered what remained of Sector 9. They'd been contracted to recover valuable materials from the destroyed warships. The debris field was massive, containing enough raw materials to supply dozens of worlds. The crew worked carefully, cataloging wreckage and mapping safe paths through the floating metal. Their sensors picked up standard readings: dead reactors, inert weapon systems, scattered personal effects from thousands of deceased crew members. Then they found something unusual: a small section of debris with an active power signature. Faint, almost undetectable, but definitely there. The crew investigated cautiously, expecting a failing emergency beacon or damaged reactor. What they found was a life pod, human design, heavily damaged but functional. Inside, medical systems showed signs of recent use, very recent. The crew captain, a cautious individual named Tor, studied the readings with confusion. Someone was in this pod. The medical systems treated severe injuries, broken bones, internal bleeding, radiation exposure. His second officer checked the timestamp. This was activated during the final battle, but the medical treatment continued for days afterward. Where's the occupant? Unknown. The pod was opened from the inside approximately 72 hours ago. Tor examined the pod more carefully. He found tools missing from the emergency kit. A functioning spacesuit was gone. Food supplies depleted. Someone had survived the battle, hidden in this pod while the coalition searched for bodies, then slipped away when it was safe. He pulled up the pod's registration number and ran it through the salvage database. The result made his blood run cold. The pod belonged to the Wayfarer, David Ross's ship. "This is impossible," his second officer whispered. "We saw his ship destroyed. The coalition confirmed his death." Tor stared at the empty pod. The coalition confirmed no life signs. They assumed destruction meant death, but humans are survivors. They adapt. "Should we report this?" "Report what?" "That we found an empty life pod. That someone might have survived, but we have no proof." Tor shook his head. "The coalition wouldn't believe us. They need David Ross to be dead. Their entire narrative depends on it." He made a decision. "We report finding salvage, nothing more. If David Ross is alive, he earned his freedom. We owe him that much." The crew agreed. The pod was logged as generic debris and recycled with the rest. No mention of its origins appeared in any official report. Somewhere in the depths of space, far from coalition patrols and curious eyes, a small vessel moved through the darkness. It was cobbled together from salvaged parts, barely spaceworthy but functional. Inside, a man with healing injuries studied star charts and made plans. David Ross had kept his promise to his daughter. He'd shown the galaxy that justice mattered, that the powerful could be challenged, that one person's determination could change everything. Now he had a new promise to keep: to live, to remember, to make sure Rebecca's dream of a better galaxy didn't die with her. The vessel's engines burned bright for a moment, then faded to nothing as it vanished into the unknown. Behind it, the Coalition struggled to maintain order in a galaxy that had learned an uncomfortable truth. Authority built on violence could be broken, and sometimes it only took one person to break it.